My name is Valerie Fitch. I'm the current president of the Brooklyn Law School Alumni Association Board. You'll hear a little bit more from me later, but welcome to this amazing 2020 lunch. I was going to save this figure, I'll give you some more later, for a little bit later, but this will not surprise you, those of you who were at this lunch last year. But last year, there were 340 of you here. This year, 450. We've got a great agenda for you today. And to kick it off, it's my great pleasure to introduce Frank Aquila, class of '83, the chair of the Board of Trustees, and also our own Dean, Michael Cahill.
Thank you, Valerie, and welcome to all of you. As some of you know, although I arrived at Brooklyn Law School as a student just over 40 years ago, and I'm happy to see some of my classmates in the room, I'm only a few months into my new role as chair of the Board of Trustees. In the dozen-plus years that I have been on the board, it has been my honor and privilege to serve under the leadership of Stu Subotnick. For 30 years, Stu has served on our Board of Trustees, and for the last 16 years, he has been board chair. Given Stu's record of service, I would be remiss if I did not take a moment to thank him for all he has done for our beloved law school. All of us here know of Stu's generous contributions which made possible the Subotnick Center, his endowment of the Subotnick Professorship currently held by Anita Bernstein, the Subotnick Scholarship Fund, and his extraordinary gift towards the construction of File Hall. Actually, though, those amazingly generous monetary gifts mask the true contributions that Stu Subotnick has made to Brooklyn Law School. Beyond his treasure, Stu has generously given of his time and talent over many decades, serving with 4 deans and 3 interim deans. Through all his efforts, Stu has made Brooklyn Law School a far, far better law school. Thankfully, Stu is continuing on the board as Chairman Emeritus and will hopefully do so for many years to come. Clearly, such a legacy as Stu's needs to be commemorated in a special way. Maybe we could name a professorship after Stu. Too late. Stu has already endowed one. Maybe we could create a scholarship in Stu's honor. Too late again. Stu has already funded one. Maybe we could name a room at Brooklyn Law School after Stu. Too late yet again. Stu has already contributed an enormous sum for the Subotnick Center. That's more than a room, it's 2 rooms. Stu, please come up here and join me for a moment. Stu, your generosity has made this a very, very difficult task. It is truly hard to find an appropriate way to honor you and all your service. When I was thinking about the Subotnick Center, though, something about it bothered me. It just bothered me. What is missing in the Subotnick Center? I think it's pretty clear. Only one thing: a portrait of you. Valerie and Michael, if you would do the honors. Please join me in giving Stu the round of applause that he richly deserves.
guys con me. I have to say something?
Only if you want.
I got conned. They said they were taking a picture for the BLS review, whatever. I said, fine. I hate to get taken. But by this organization and this school, take me anytime you want. This school is just amazing. And all of us owe our lives and what became of our lives to this institution. And I'm glad you're all here to honor the people we're going to honor, not me, to honor the people we're going to honor. Thank you.
Good afternoon. How's everyone doing? What a great video. Was that not amazing? Was that not amazing? I want to give another round of applause to the Brooklyn Law School students. I'm Timothy Oberweger, class of 2005, and a proud member of the Alumni Board. I'm here today as the fundraising chair, so close the doors. Don't get up to leave, because we're about to set even more records. This year's luncheon has already set a record for the highest levels of sponsorship and revenue in the 120 years of Brooklyn Law School's existence. But records are made to be broken. First, I'd like to thank all of you for coming out to this beautiful place on a little bit of a dreary day, but if you just look around you, you're surrounded by some of the most amazing people. All of us have connections to Brooklyn, and you'll hear from some of our honorees, one of which was my mentee, so I am truly amazed about what Brooklyn Law School does for all of our lives. I want to thank Valerie Fitch, the president of the Alumni Board, Debbie Riegel, the soon-to-be future president, and most importantly, Caitlin, Saran, and Sean from the law school. Without their work, the Alumni Board could not and would not function. Okay, so now is the big moment that everyone has been waiting for. I know you came in here thinking, I'm gonna have a couple glasses of wine, it's a Friday, we're gonna have some nice food, a great view. No, you're here for one purpose, and that purpose is to support Brooklyn Law School. So, because I have a chair, I need to act on being a chair, and I'm not gonna sit in my chair until everyone finds the pledge card. Jason Ganfer, my classmate, is waving them, and I have one. I already filled mine out. I saw a few others that were filled out. Any donation to the law school is greatly appreciated. There are so many programs, including all the clinics, all the extracurricular opportunities, all the things that Dean Cahill has so masterfully started to put in place in his new tenure. They need your support. So I'm here to make that ask, and I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic that we will be filling out enough pledge cards at an average number of only $250 each. And one of the most esteemed judges in the audience today said to ask for only 6- and 7-figure donations. But I'm asking for $250 on average. That will double the amount that we've already generated today. So give what you can. I know everyone's trying to get to the door, but I really do appreciate everyone at least giving something. So that's my ask. There are people wandering the rooms to pick up your pledge. They're wearing maroon hats, or not yet. They're getting ready to don their beautiful maroon hats. So when you fill it out, you can hand it to them, or they have a square, and you can actually swipe your credit card and pay that way. It's much easier. So, all right, that's my ask. Now I want to say a huge thank you to all of our sponsors. They were being listed on the board, but I'll read them. Why don't we read them? Or better yet, you could read along by just picking up this beautiful program. So first, I want to thank our diamond level sponsors, $10,000 sponsors, Harriet Newman Cohen, Frank Aquila, who you heard from earlier, Our gold level sponsors, Lloyd Ambinder of Virginia and Ambinder, Robert Schmidt of Kramer Levin, Debbie Riegel of Rosenberg Estes, Tom Welling of Venable, David Berger of Allergert Berger and Vogel, Evan Azalian of SE and Azalian PC, Valerie Fitch and Ed Flanders, Stephen Scheinfeld, Emil Buckman of Fried Frank, yours truly, Timothy Oberweger of Stewart Title, Neil Goldstein of Robinson Brog, no one clapped for me, but that's okay, Joel Glasser of Trollman Glasser Lickman, these are silver level, Jason Gia, who you'll hear from shortly, congrats Jason, Jacqueline McMinnins and Associates, Aaron Warshaw, Ogletree Deacons, She Men of Fortuna, Martin Minkowitz and Carol Ziegler of the Minkowitz Charitable Foundation, Sasha Linney, Stacy Katner and Eric Kornblau, Tartar Krinsky, down to the bronze level, $1,500 level, Barbara McGrady, Vincent Pitta of Pitta LLP, Steve Cohn of Goldberg and Cohn, Martin Fisher of Fisher Law Firm, Scott Hazan of Pachowski, Stang, Zeal, and Jones, Sean Devine of Douglas Ellivan, thank you, Sean, Gloria Greco and Elizabeth Crea, Joan Levinson, David Kim, Triangle Services, Sterling Affair, Ken Sundberg of the Cunningham Group, and the last bronze sponsor on the list is a class of 13 graduate, Stephen Popernick. Can you wave if you're here? Class of 13, I'm very impressed. So next year I expect classes of 14 through 20, or 19 rather, or maybe 20, 21, whatever. I want to see big donations coming from all of you. So please fill out your pledge cards. If you can't fill them out here, bring them home, donate, give back to the law school, and thank you for all of your contributions so far.
Thank you, Tim. Who can resist your enthusiasm? All right, can I have your attention because we're about to start with our presentation to the honorees. So, once again, I'm Valerie Fitch. I am the current president of the Alumni Association, and I'm very pleased. We've actually started a couple of new things in the Alumni Association. One is the establishment of an executive committee so that there is a small group of the larger board that meets in between the meetings, and our goal is to really create more activities for our alumni, both those of you in this room and our very recent alumni. And in that vein, the Alumni Association will have a presence for the first time, I believe, at graduation this year, because we want our new graduates to know how much they mean to us, how important they are to the institution, and that we really want them to keep in touch. We also have instituted in this executive committee a president-elect, and Tim mentioned her, but I want to call out Deborah Riegel, who will follow me as president of the association. So some of you may recall I held this position a couple of years ago. Yes, I'm back, and I'm very honored to have a second opportunity to serve the law school. But when I was re-elected, it did cross my mind that the board might be getting back at me because of something I did during my prior term. Some of you may recall a few years ago at one of the alumni lunches at the Plaza, I was introducing the honorees, and one of whom owned a sports team called the Meerkats. For reasons that elude me to this day, I spontaneously meowed from the podium. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but, and I'm not going to be doing that today. I wanted to be remembered as the president of the Alumni Association who worked to abolish and succeeded abolishing Alumni Association membership dues. But no, it's the meow. So I gave you those statistics previously, 340 attendees last year, which was a record then, 450 this year. Last year, at last count, and this may have even gotten higher since the beginning of the lunch, we had 18 sponsors last year. This year, there are at least 34, resulting in over $107,000 in sponsorships alone. Now, that does not mean you should not fill out those pledge cards and find the people wandering the room with their squares. Please do so. In exchange for no longer having membership dues, we want you to support the law school in other ways. Again, I want to thank, as Tim did, Saran, Caitlin, Sean, Camille, and Matt, all of whom work on either alumni engagement or in the development office, and they are all stellar human beings. They make us look good. They do all the work. We just show up, and they're terrific. So now, it's my pleasure to introduce Michael T. Cahill, President, Joe Crea, Dean, and Professor of Law.
Hello, everyone. I am going to quickly try to do two things. All I have to say are, first, welcome, and second, thank you. So first, welcome. It is a thrill to see this amazing turnout that Valerie described earlier, over 450 people, and I am so glad that all of you and each of you could be here today. But I have to make a few specific welcomes. First, I'd like to recognize the members of our Board of Trustees, of course, Chairman Frank Aquila and Chairman Emeritus Stuart Subotnick, who you met earlier. But also here are David Barse. Shout out to David, in particular, for helping secure this year's commencement speaker, Preet Bharara. Thank you, David. Fred Cohen, Bob Kaufman, Steve Scheinfeld, and of course, judges Ramon Reyes and Claire Kelly, who are immediately in front of me. And I want to particularly welcome the two newest members of our board, recent graduate trustees, Dex and Dang, class of 2016, and Garen Noel, class of 2015. Garen, Dexon, this is the best part of your term. After you have been named, but before you've had to attend any meetings. So enjoy it. And my next welcome is also a transition to the thank you, because I want to note and ask you to join me in showing our appreciation for the more than 20 members of our Alumni Association board here today. So could I ask those members to stand so that we can take a moment to recognize you and thank you for all your hard work in making this day possible. But more generally, I would like to thank everyone here in this room. This event is not just a gathering of our alumni, it is a celebration of our alumni. And I would like to thank you for all of the ways that you support the law school. And particularly, I'd like to point to three different things that I am appreciative that you do. First, thank you for supporting each other. A strong alumni network depends not only on having successful alumni, which we do, but on having tight connections between those alumni, and I'm proud to say that we are building those connections every day. Importantly, of course, through the Alumni Board, and also through events just like this one that give you an opportunity to gather and interact, but also through new initiatives, and I want to particularly single out, as one example, our new Women's Leadership Network, which was created just over a year ago, but has already had a number of well-attended and highly successful events that are bringing our graduates together and creating important mentoring opportunities. So thank you to everyone who is involved in the Women's Leadership Network. So thank you for what you do to help each other and grow our network. Second, I want to thank you for supporting our students. Every time one of you visits a class or teaches a class, comes to a student event, answers a phone call or an email from one of our current students, or, best case scenario, offers a job, or points someone to an opportunity, you are paying it forward to those who are going to follow you. And thinking about and taking care of future generations is what families do. And I am grateful to all of you for thinking of Brooklyn Law School as your extended family and making that happen for the people who will follow you, who today are hoping that they will someday be where you are today. So many thanks to all of you for that. Thank you. Thank yourselves. Take a moment. Third and finally, I want to thank you for your financial support. As you know, there is a lot happening at Brooklyn Law School. We are currently in the first year of implementing a major reform of our first-year curriculum. I saw our legal writing director, Heidi Brown, who's right over there, which includes, among other things, increasing the number of credits in the legal writing program from 4 to 7 in the first year. I had to go to a second hand for that. 7 credits of legal writing in the first year. We have also increased and expanded our academic success program so that we can improve our students' performance both in law school and on the bar exam. And so we are helping them as they come in. We are trying to sustain them and prepare them for when they go out. Innovations and additions to our curriculum like these are critical, but they demand resources. And we are a nonprofit. We can't gather those resources through private equity or through an IPO. We grow through philanthropy. That is what sustains us. And to give you just one example, I am very proud to say, as many of you know, that as of January 1st, I have named Professor Karen Porter, who is here today somewhere, Karen, our first ever Associate Dean for Inclusion and Diversity. There she is. Karen is going to be engaged in a broad range of efforts to make sure we are attracting excellent, outstanding students of all backgrounds, providing a welcoming and supportive environment for everyone in our law school community, and launching our graduates into a broad array of careers that will help diversify not just our law school, but the legal profession. And I am also proud to say that these initiatives that Karen will be participating in are made possible in part through the generosity of someone who is not a graduate, but I believe is a name that will be familiar to many of you, retired Brooklyn Law School professor Arthur Pinto. Through a combination of a 6-figure current pledge and a planned estate gift, Arthur's commitment to our diversity initiatives is well in excess of $1 million. I am deeply grateful for Arthur's generosity, just as I am grateful for the ongoing support of so many of you who are helping ensure the success of our law school and of our graduates, individually and collectively. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Michael. All right. So at this time, I'd like to bring up to the podium Patricia Putney, class of 1989, who will be talking about her wonderful mother, Harriet Cohen, class of 1974, who is the recipient of this year's Alumna of the Year Award.
Good afternoon. I'm an attorney at a law firm in Madison, Wisconsin. I graduated class of '89 along with David Berger. If anybody needs local counsel in Madison, Wisconsin, I am your gal. I am Harriet's daughter. I am her 4th daughter out of 4 daughters. So I'm the baby. I'm not that young, but I'm still the baby. No woman likes to divulge her age, and she'll probably kill me for this, but Harriet Newman Cohen is 87 years young. And she is still going strong. Along this journey, she had 4 daughters, 2 stepchildren, 10 grandchildren, 3 step-grandchildren, and she is about to be a great-grandmother for the first time next month. And a very pregnant spouse is here. I received this honor to introduce her today because out of all that offspring, I am the only BLS graduate, class of '89, although there are some young ones, and maybe some of them will be inspired today to join this great group of attorneys. So I am not going to talk about all of Harriet's accomplishments because you can look that up on her website or in the Super Lawyer article about her or in this program. So instead, I'm going to talk about being 8 years old because when I was 8 years old, my mother started law school at the age of 38. She applied to law school after being encouraged to do so by her very good friends, Judge Leo Glasser, who's here today, who was a former dean and professor of the law school, and by her good friend Judah Gribbetts, who's also here today. And both of these wonderful men, who were both like a father to me, told her she was not too old to go to law school at age 38. And so while other moms, in the 1970s were picking up their kids from school and making tuna noodle casserole, mine was studying torts and contracts and working on the law review. She was not cooking casserole. She was not cooking anything. And that is a very good thing. It's one of her weaknesses. So at 8 years old, if I had a day off of school, or if I was sick with a fever, she would bring me with her to class. I can remember that, being really sick and going to Brooklyn Law School. So I would bring my homework or my coloring books, and I can vividly remember sitting on the floor in the back of a classroom coloring, and it's a classroom I would later myself be a law student in about 15 years later. At 8 years old, I got my introduction to narcolepsy, because as many of you in this room may remember, there was a professor who had narcolepsy. And I used to love going to that class because I thought it was absolutely fascinating. Her classmates, who were mainly very handsome young men, maybe some of them are here today, they were very nice to 8-year-old me. And it's probably part of the reason I went to law school. Harriet also bonded, of course, with a few women who became lifelong friends, and we women stick together in male-dominated places. And then in Harriet's 3rd year of law school, her husband, the father of her 4 children, left her. Those were not the days of joint custody. Those were not the days of involved fathers. Kramer versus Kramer came out in 1979, which was 5 years after my mom graduated from law school. So there she was, embarking on a brand new legal career at the age of 40 with 4 kids to raise on her own. 4 teenage and preteen girls. And any of you with teenage girls understand the significance of this, which until I had my own teenage girl, I really did not get it. But there she was with 4 teenage girls and preteen girls. I won't say it was always easy. Sometimes I wanted that casserole-making mother. But ultimately, my mother's choices became a huge influence on the life I myself have led and on the choices I myself made in schooling, career, and raising kids while working full-time as an attorney. My kids also probably wanted that casserole-making mom at times. Check with my son. I, too, am a very bad cook, so that is also genetic. Fortunately, my mother's life story included her second husband, my stepfather, the late Arthur Feinberg, a nice Jewish doctor. My mom met Arthur shortly after the divorce when she was a young associate working with Louis Nizer. He was a widower and quite honestly the kindest person one could ever meet. It probably won't surprise those of you who know my mother that she called him the first time and she made the first move. She was not shy. They married 9 years later, and he made her wait for that. They were married for 19 years until his passing in 2005. Theirs was a real love story. They were very, very devoted to one another. And Arthur's family is here today, his son, his daughter, and daughter-in-law. So I don't know where you are sitting. And cousins, I'm told, also cousins. My mom came into their lives as quite the force of nature with her big personality and her 4 teenage and preteen daughters in tow. I can't tell you how many people drop their jaws when I say that my mom is still practicing law at age 87, and not only that, she is a workaholic. While other women of her age are slowing down their activities considerably, she goes to theater and restaurants and she travels around the world, mainly with my sister, Amy. The last few years, they went to Machu Picchu, they went on a safari to Africa, they went to Eastern Europe to locate the birthplace of her parents. I describe my mom as a lioness. She is protective of her pride, which extends to her family, her colleagues, and her clients. She is fiercely loyal. She never, ever holds a grudge. You can fight, and you will fight, but she will never hold a grudge. It is not in her DNA. She is the matriarch of our extended family and loves being the matriarch. She is always going off to a birthday party or a book signing for her nieces and her nephews. She's clearly the matriarch of her law firm, who I think most of them are here today. She's also an incredibly devoted grandmother who adores all of her grandchildren. They are all geniuses, by the way. Each and every one. I am the only daughter of the 4 daughters who left New York and moved to flyover country. But Madison is blue. I am here to tell you, you can take the girl out of New York, but you cannot take New York out of the girl. When I was changing my last name to Putney a few years ago, I remarried. My mother said, "Nobody's going to know you're a New York Jew." So I said, "Well, I'll know, and I'll be a stealth New York Jew." But even though I moved far away, my mother never missed a single dance performance or a concert or a show that my kids were involved in. She might be talking on her Bluetooth in the lobby or in the auditorium, getting glares from all of the other concert goers, but she would be there. And those are the important moments in life, and she has been there for those important moments. As I was mingling here today, I had people come over to me and say, my mom is inspiring, she's amazing, she's a role model, and all of those things are true. Her accomplishments are many, and even though she drives her 4 daughters a little bit crazy sometimes, that's also genetic. I can tell you that we are all extremely proud of my mom, the accomplishments, the challenges she faced and overcame, and I am extremely honored to present my mother as Alumni of the Year, Harriet Newman Cohen.
Now, when I heard my good friend Stuart Subotnick get up here and be surprised the way he was and say those amazing, wonderful remarks that only a brilliant Brooklyn Law School graduate could think of saying when you had no idea that your portrait was going to be unveiled. And he said, I said to myself, that's kind of talk I want to give. I love the way he just gave that talk. So that's going to be a bit of a hard act to follow. But my daughter, Patty, when I spoke to her on the phone from Wisconsin, and when we texted, and I would say to her, anything you want to tell me about your remarks? No. You sure you don't want to tell me anything? I'm saying to myself, when I put my remarks together, I don't want to cover the same ground. No, that'll be fine. Well, what a talk. What a talk. I am personally blown away. It's very thrilling for me to be standing up here, and I'm going to talk for a few minutes about what Brooklyn Law School has meant to me. But can you imagine how I feel right now hearing my life summed up by my baby in a way that makes me happy? They did lose things by my coming to Brooklyn Law School, but they gained things as well. As far as the kitchen and the cooking, Patty, I have spent the past 2 nights with RBG, first being interviewed at the Lotus Club, and then being roasted by the Association of the Bar of the City of New York. And the most outstanding thing about her on both evenings is she cannot cook, she does not do well in the kitchen, and I'm glad to share that with RBG. She also turned out wonderful family, is leaving a very great heritage. She told us at the Lotus Club that she was having scans and tests at Sloan Kettering 2 days ago, and that she was hopeful that she was going to have good news. She seemed in very, very good spirits at the City Bar, so I hope she is going to have a long life. And for you to have selected the one thing that Ruth and I have in common, no, that's not true. I went to James Madison High School, and she was Kiki Bader in those days. And she was a twirler and a booster and a very adorable first-in-the-class little girl. And she went on from there to be who she became. So I guess I have more in common with her than just the fact that I cannot cook and I'm not great in the kitchen and that I'm forward. I think she was forward, too, with Marty Ginsburg, her wonderful husband. Thank you, Patty, for that. So, Patty, we have a lot in common, but the most important thing that we have in common, as we can see today, is that we both went to this wonderful law school. This wonderful law school was the beginning of my second life. You've talked a little bit about my first life. I didn't know whether I was going to be able to do this at age 38. I knew I wanted to do this. I wanted to be taken seriously. I wanted to understand the law. I had been a Latin major at Barnard. I had a master's from Bryn Mawr. I had amazing teachers at those schools, but I needed to do something more. And Brooklyn Law School was the more, but I thought I would take a look first and see whether I was going to be able to fit there. And I went down to 375 Pearl Street. I looked around, and Leo, the only woman I saw there was Lucy Giroux, a law school graduate who was the school librarian. I didn't see any women professors. If there were some women students in the school, they weren't there that day. I was very terrified, but I was tremendously encouraged to go to law school, both by Professor Glasser, Judge Glasser, as well as his wonderful wife, Grace. They helped me to get in. I hadn't been to school in 18 years. And that was the beginning of my second life. I thought to myself, how am I going to buy books? Look at all these young men here. Steve, where are you, Steve Elbaum? Raise your hand. There's one of the handsome young men who was nice to my 8-year-old daughter. Still a handsome young man. It was so wonderful going to school with you. You remember those days, Steve, in that classroom? And we were the returnees. I was there with about 3 other women who were given an opportunity to come back. We were the class of 74. We were 10%. Today, I think it's over 51%? Over 51%. And medical school the same, right? Where's my doctor daughter, Susie? Medical school is over 51% women today, too? Well, so things have changed. Things have changed a lot. And Brooklyn Law School changed me, and we changed Brooklyn Law School. I didn't come to Brooklyn Law School completely unformed, but what I found at Brooklyn Law School formed me for the rest of my life. I came from wonderful parents. Yes, Patty, I did go with Amy, and I found my mother's town near Warsaw, and I saw where she went to school and where she lived. And my wonderful parents had the tradition of Eastern European parents who emphasized education tremendously. And so I got a very good education. When my mother had to move and father from a beautiful house in Providence, Rhode Island, to a flat because it was in the district of a private school called the Henry Barnard School, she moved so that her children, Alvin, my brother, turn around so I can see you. Here you are from Toronto. And the rest of my family, we went to the best private school in Providence, free, because my mother found a street where they would take us in free so that the other children could get other benefits. And if they took free children, the government was willing to do more for the school. So my mother moved us into the flat, and we got that fabulous education. So my parents were great teachers. And then I had more great teachers, and what today is about for me is my great teachers. So everybody who knows me knows that I always talk about my Latin teachers at Barnard and Columbia, Professor Gilbert Hyatt, such an amazing influence on me, and I was a music minor, and so I had concert pianists teaching me. Otto Luening, I don't know if there are any musicians in the room, Otto Luening taught me, and then I went to the law school, and I was privileged to be taught by Leo Glasser, who's here, professor, judge, dean, my teacher. I had to do an examination for him. I was very worried that I wouldn't measure up and that he would think maybe he had made a mistake by encouraging me to come at age 38 after 18 years being away from school. But Leo, I think you gave me at least an A, maybe an A+, I think. I hope that you remember that I was a good student. I had wonderful, wonderful other teachers at the school. The teacher that Patty was talking about was Fabian Palomino. At that time, he would fall asleep leaning on the blackboard. But he's the reason I went into matrimonial law. He had me on my feet reciting about the case that took place in a hotel called the Grand Central Hotel. It was a divorce case in the days where you had to have grounds to be able to have a divorce in New York. It's now the Pershing Square restaurant under Grand Central. And in that case, he had me on my feet. We sat alphabetically, and I was Cohen, so I was in the front near a wall, so I was able to lean on the wall a little, and he had me reciting, and I recall he said, well, we all know when the detectives got there to break into the hotel room to prove that there had been adultery so that the divorce could be granted, they were not saying their pater nosters. And I recall, of course, pater, and I'm not Catholic, but I knew what that meant. So they were doing something else. Well, I thought he was the most fascinating professor. He, at a certain point, lost a lot of weight, and I don't think he had that sleeping illness anymore after that. But it was impressive to you, Patty, at age 8. I'm sitting here today with wonderful people who were part of my life: Dean Nick Allard, Dean Mary Ellen Fullerton, Dean Glasser, Dean Gerber. Where's other deans that I haven't mentioned? And the tradition goes on. Dean Cahill. It's good I have my horse and pony show out here. It's been such a pleasure to welcome you, Dean Cahill, to be the dean here, to build on the innovativeness of Nick and Mary Ellen, and of course Leo and Michael and these other wonderful deans. It's just fabulous that Brooklyn Law School continues to be in the tradition of the finest scholarship, the finest students, the finest professors. I had Gilbert Hyatt. I had Usachevsky. I was at Bryn Mawr for my master's. By the way, I was really prepared for life. I was a Latin major, I was a music minor, and I was 7 months pregnant with my daughter Marty, who's here today and is my named law partner at the law firm. I was really prepared for life. Not really. Brooklyn Law School prepared me for life with those extraordinary teachers. Gilbert Hyatt wrote a book called The Art of Teaching. Every one of the teachers that I had at Brooklyn Law School could have been Gilbert Hyatt's teacher. They were even better than him. They were marvelous. When I come to these wonderful occasions, I see, excuse me, people line up to see their old professors. And by the way, we're really living longer, and I'm not such a miracle. I have a lot of people who are like me around me, who are my age and who are working and who are energetic and who go to theater and who go to dinner, and you all can feel very, very good and do feel inspired because you have a lot good coming up for you in the future. In any event, I want to thank you all. Let me make sure I covered what I wanted to cover. I wanted to do a quote from a woman, so let me just look for it, because I had a quote that my stepson David Feinberg gave me. He thought I should start my talk with a baseball quote. In my whole life, I've never, ever, ever done a baseball quote, but I'm going to try to do it now. He said to me, say this. The great New York Yankee outfielder, Tommy Henrik, was once asked how he could justify making all that money playing a children's game. And he said, while it's true that catching a fly ball is a pleasure, knowing what to do with it after you catch it is a business. He said, and when you have to give your remarks, Harriet, that's going to be the hard part. So that's like, what do you do with the fly ball? Well, you're going to have to figure out how to do the remarks. And I looked over my talk and I said, well, that's a baseball thing. Not that comfortable with it. I'm going to look for Little Women. So I found something by Louisa May Alcott, and I think that this has a lot to do with what happened in my life. Joe March said, I want to do something splendid, something heroic or wonderful that won't be forgotten after I'm dead. I don't know what it is, but I'm on the watch for it, and I mean to astonish you all with it someday. Well, I knew what it was. It was coming here to this wonderful law school. It was co-founding my wonderful law firm, which should have been mentioned when the money part was talked about. You heard my name, but you didn't hear my partners or the name of my firm. Do you think I can go back to the firm today unless I fix that? So I want you to know that that wonderful donation was Cohen, Rabin, Stein, Schumann. My partners are here, my name partners, my whole firm, and they have been so supportive and wonderful to me. The other thing is, matriarch of the firm, Patty, you're trying to get me in a lot of trouble. We have equality, we have diversity, we are women-owned. We have a Brooklyn Law School graduate working for us, Ankit Kapoor, who joined us recently. Very proud of him. He's he's going to be one of the more illustrious graduates of this law school. I think I'm going to let the other honorees speak now. Stuart, it's such a pleasure that I was honored here today together with you. You're my dear friend. I had a secret. You didn't know the secret. Linda, you're very smart. I don't know how you kept that secret. Thank you all so very much for coming. And let's all come again next year, even if I'm not being honored. Thank you.
Now I'd like to bring up Stacy Kaplow, who will be introducing Jason Gia, class of 2011, this year's recipient of the Brooklyn Law School Rising Star Award.
Hi, everybody. So I love coming to this event, and it's for all the reasons that I should think are obvious to all of you. It's great for us who've been teaching at the law school for a long time and short time to greet former students, to see you both shortly after graduation as well as when you have been gone for quite a long time and you're returning to the family. It's really eye-opening to learn about your careers and your lives post-BLS. For us, your former teachers, we're sort of frozen in amber. We see a group of people coming every year. They're young and they're eager. And then we say goodbye and good luck at graduation. And it sometimes seems like time stands still. But it doesn't. I'm probably the only person, I'm probably second to Harriet in being old at this event. She's probably the only person here who I didn't have in my class. But time doesn't stand still, and in fact, Joel Gora, who I know is here somewhere, he and I had the sort of bittersweet pleasure of going to a retirement party for one of our former students. So, really, you all do great things, and this annual event is a reminder of how, even with the passage of time, our alumni accomplished so much in so many diverse areas. I'm really pleased today that we're honoring 3 of you, our supernovas, Harriet and David, and our rising star, Jason Gia, and also to see so many other recent graduates who are going to be the rising stars next year or the year after, the year after. So I'm privileged to have been asked to introduce Jason. I'm not his daughter. I'm more like his parent, and I don't know whether or not he cooks. But I'm privileged to introduce him. He graduated only in 2011, but he's the founder and managing partner of an innovative and successful global practice, which I'm sure you can read about in more detail. I think of Jason as E squared. He's an entrepreneur for entrepreneurs. His quick success is really breathtaking, and I was particularly struck by one sentence that I saw on his website. It said, "Mr. Gia has a reputation for treating his clients as if he were an in-house lawyer, focusing on their best interests and zealously representing them in negotiations." While this likely refers to Jason's business clients, I'd like to take just a teeny bit of credit for the underlying professional philosophy that's embedded in that statement. Jason is devoted to his clients. He listens and cares for their well-being, advocates for them vigorously, and puts their interests first. Like so many students whose first contact with clients in practice occurred in a BLS clinic, which, by the way, is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. I know Jason best from his semester in the Safe Harbor Project as a 2L student in fall 2009. Most 2L students in their first semester are pretty unformed, and they haven't had much opportunity to put their classroom knowledge to use. It's an intense semester, and in that time, Jason learned quickly how very important he could be to the life of his client, a young asylum seeker who had lost most of her family, had brutal experiences in her home country, had moved across borders to escape more harm, and had fled to the U.S. alone, only then to be trafficked in a hair salon upon her arrival. She landed in a shelter with a newborn and finally found her way to our clinic. In her words, she was depressed, isolated, and scared. Not an easy first case for a law student. But Jason and his teammates worked tirelessly with their students for months, slowly gaining our client for months, slowly gaining her trust and understanding the horrific details of her story. While they overcame evidentiary and legal obstacles, they put together a winning case. They were integral to her healing and finding safety in the U.S. Nothing can beat this moving and rewarding experience as a first client and a first success as a lawyer. The compassion and care that Jason brought to that case clearly are imprinted on him. Today, his client's probably not as vulnerable and bruised as his first, but he treats them with the same attention and respect that characterized his very first case. It's thrilling to see that Jason's continued to work in immigration law while he's expanding his practice and achieving success so quickly. His is not just a professional success story, however. In the words of BLS icon, the late legendary Joe Crea, he is a giver. He pays forward. He mentors current students, shares his wisdom with our boot camp class, hires our graduates, Zach Meyer, class of 19 right here, and he most recently created a scholarship in honor of Professor Barbara Gartner, the ESL specialist who taught at BLS for 25 years and who's had such a big impact on Jason's own success. She quietly and without fanfare helped him and so many other students, such as Hannah Cow, who was also honored here 2 years ago as an alum, to navigate law school. How wonderful that Jason can now acknowledge her hard work and commitment to her students with his gift. Jason, being a rising star has its burdens. Rising stars raise expectations. We'll all be watching as you continue to make your mark. We expect nothing less than an aurora borealis. I drew upon my modest astronomy awareness. We expect nothing less from you, and based on your achievements in just 10 years since your graduation, I'm confident none of us will be disappointed as you secure a place in the firmament. Your talent and generosity should assure that outcome. I'm pleased to have played a small part in launching your promising career, and thank you for allowing me for a few moments to congratulate you, as well as our other honorees. Picture first. Congratulations. Am I getting this picture? I take it away.
Thank you, Dean Kaplow, for the kind introduction. When anyone asks me what my favorite classes were in law school, I always tell them immigration and Safe Harbor Clinic. Both were with you. Your inspirational impact cannot be overstated. Dear honorable guests, chairman of the board, Dean Cahill, Dean Gerber, fellow honorees, colleagues, and friends, receiving this award is one of the great honors of my life. I am so pleased to see my colleagues here at my table this afternoon. As our partner Tom likes to say, there's no hiding the fact that we are a boutique firm. At JLG, the phrase, everyone counts, is more than some old expression. It's a lifestyle. Your legal acumen, values, and dedication are empowering JLG to step onto the global stage, and I know I'd never be here without you. I would like to thank our business immigration partner, Matthew Colleget. You were one of the first visionaries to join us from a big firm. When it comes to fighting the current administration's anti-immigrant policy, there's nobody I'd rather have at my side. To our litigation partner, Thomas Kahn, also a BLS alum, thank you for being my personal counsel and your abiding trust. James Berger, our global enforcement partner, thank you for placing your confidence in our mission to practice law beyond borders. It means a great deal to me, and we're fortunate to have you. Special shout out to my man, my classmate, Joseph Hamel. You were the first BLS alum to join JLG. I have such respect for your contributions and character. And Zach, our first summer associate from BLS, I congratulate you on passing the bar, and we're lucky to have you. Daniela, my mentee, welcome to the family. And last but not least, thank you, Phoebe and Ivy. You have been by my side since the beginning. You have witnessed the highs and the lows, yet your strength and talents remain unrivaled. The truth is, all of you have earned my most sincere gratitude just for putting up with me. Honestly, I don't know how you guys do it. I promise that as we commence this new chapter in the firm's development, expanding into shiny new offices downtown, growing our footprint in California, and opening for business in China, our journey will be filled with meaningful challenges, genuine camaraderie, and maybe, possibly, even a weekend off. I will be remiss not to thank my mentor from BLS, Tim Oberweger. Tim, I still remember you taking the time to bring me to business meetings and closings. You opened my eyes to new worlds and ways of thinking. Thank you for always believing in me. I would also like to thank Dean Michael Gerber. Our trip to Beijing remains one of my happiest memories. I'm so grateful you invited me to join the business bootcamp this year. I hope we can return to Asia, catch up, drink up, explore, and have our dear friend David Kim pay for all of it. One other special guest at my table, Professor Barbara Garner. Her excellence at teaching legal writing and generous extra help outside the classroom were game changers in my life at BLS and after. Many people don't know that BLS has a special program to help non-native speakers of English, and I was a beneficiary of that program and still reap the benefits. That's why I'm proud to announce that I'll be working with Brooklyn Law School to establish a scholarship in Professor Garner's name, so even more students from diverse backgrounds so even more students from diverse backgrounds can unlock opportunities and potential, someday paying it forward as well. Look, I think we can all agree that 2020 has been off to a rocky start. Well, unless you're from Kansas City. Go Chiefs. We face the aftermath of impeachment trial, threats of war with Iran, US-China tensions, the profound consequences of November's election, no matter who wins, and now the coronavirus, in tragic fashion, is teaching us that since pandemics don't discriminate, perhaps we shouldn't either. With so much uncertainty, there's a natural temptation to isolate, not at JLG. Our efforts to forge connections, embrace new technologies, provide cross-cultural counsel, and design proactive solutions prove crises can be overcome and prevented. 2020 can still be reshaped and reclaimed. This can be our year to defy the cynics, embrace inclusivity, and open our minds to new people and new ideas. After all, that's what Brooklyn Law School did by taking a chance on me. I'll never forget that. My parents moved to this country with $20 in their pocket. They have worked at least 2 jobs, sometimes 3, as far back as I can remember. They instilled in me the work ethic and courage it takes to achieve a better life. I want to thank them for teaching me the Mamba mentality before there was a Kobe Bryant. In the words of late Kobe, those times when you get up early and work hard, those times you stay up late and you work hard, those times you don't feel like working, you're too tired, you don't want to push yourself, but you do it anyway, that is actually the dream. To my incredible wife, thank you so much for everything you do for our family and 2 beautiful boys. My love for you is beyond words. May all of you enjoy health, happiness, and fortune in the days and years ahead. Alexander, Dada, love you very much. Thank you.
And now, last but not least, Michael Gerber will come up and introduce our last honoree, David Berger, class of 1989, and the recipient of our Alumnus of the Year award for 2020.
Thank you. You know, we speak a lot about the Brooklyn Law School family. And for David Berger, Brooklyn Law School really is a family affair. David is the son of the late beloved Margaret Berger, who taught many of you evidence and civil procedure, or both. David's father, Mark, was not only Margaret's life partner, but also her law firm partner. They practiced together as Berger and Berger until Margaret joined the BLS family in 1973. And when Margaret joined the family, so did Mark. He was present at nearly every important BLS social event that I can remember, and some of the less important ones too. When Margaret joined the faculty, David was 11 and his brother Josh was 14, and they also joined the family. Now in David's case, the apple didn't fall far from the litigation tree. After he graduated from Sarah Lawrence in 1983, he worked at Burson Marsteller, the PR firm, doing corporate communications. But the lure of the law proved irresistible, and he entered Brooklyn Law School in 1986. He continued to do freelance work for Burson while he was a student, a fact that he hid from many of us. He was assigned to the first contracts course that I ever taught and does not appear to be the worse for it. After graduation, David joined a high-octane firm where associates were given a great deal of responsibility and client contact very early on. It was an environment that would have strained the mettle of 3rd and 4th year associates, but David, a first-year associate, thrived. How did he manage to succeed in that high-pressured environment? David says he loved the work, and as a result, he loved working. David not only found his inner lawyer at the firm, He also found fellow associates Christopher Allegart and Michael Vogel, with whom, just a few years out of law school, he would co-found the distinguished firm that bears their names. That had to be beyond scary. Today, at Allegart, Berger, and Vogel, David maintains a broad-based litigation practice. He represents clients in contract, antitrust, bankruptcy, entertainment, and corporate governance matters. He represents clients in multi-district, multi-party class actions and other complex cases. And I suspect he is consistently the calmest head in the room. Doing a reality check. David is well known and well respected by the judges of the federal and state courts in which he regularly appears and where he's known for his credibility as well as his advocacy. He's also a skilled mediator. Although he's represented clients in business divorces, he recently helped a prominent firm not break up. All of this undoubtedly helps explain why his client roster includes clients he's represented for decades, including many that date back to his earliest associate days. It also explains why his firm is considered a great place to work. David, who's become increasingly involved in law office management, tries to nurture an environment in which lawyers and staff, despite the unavoidable demands of law practice, also love the work and therefore love working. David's forceful, tenacious representation of his clients belies his basic good nature, kindness, and most important for present purposes, his particular breed of generosity. Tzedakah, as many of us know, is a Hebrew word meaning justice, but it's also commonly used to refer to charity. Maimonides, the great codifier of Jewish law, developed a hierarchy of 8 levels of charitable giving, each level corresponding to the donor's sensitivity to the needs and feelings of the beneficiary. One of the uppermost rungs is occupied by donors who give before they are asked to give. David and his brother Josh have that one covered. Several years ago, they established the Margaret A. Berger Scholarship in memory of their mom. It's awarded each year to a student who demonstrates exceptional achievement in evidence or civil procedure. The highest rung on the ladder, however, and the highest form of charity, is to give someone a job. Not only does it preserve the recipient's dignity, but it also enables the recipient to pay the generosity forward by giving jobs to others. It's really generosity compounded. From the time that David co-founded his firm, he's been a tireless mentor, an employer, and advocate for Brooklyn Law School graduates and students. He will never turn a student who needs advice away, and whenever he's in a position to hire a BLS grad, he does. Nearly a third of the firm's lawyers are also members of the BLS alumni family. And speaking of families, you won't be surprised to know that in addition to being a great lawyer and a great alum, David is also a great husband and father. And I'm delighted to introduce his lawyer, mediator, photographer wife, Tracy. And daughter, Tashi, who's working at the firm as a paralegal. His son, Noe, is up at Vassar and couldn't join the fun. And now there's just one more member of the Brooklyn Law School family left to present, Alumnus of the Year, David Berger.
Oh, thank you. It's for me.
But you get to give it back now.
Wow. Thank you so much, Michael Gerber. Dean Cahill, faculty and staff, Chairman Aquila, and the Board of Trustees, President Fitch, and my fellow co-directors of the Alumni Association, distinguished guests and friends, and most of all, my fellow alumni. Thank you all for this wonderful honor. And congratulations, of course, to my fellow honorees. It is a further privilege to be in such company. In accepting this award, I want to recognize and thank the entire family, as it were, for any success I may have achieved. I want to thank my wife and inspiration always, Tracy Altman, and my children, Tashi and Noe. Thank you also to my partners, colleagues, and friends. But I want to highlight today my unerring gratitude to the Brooklyn Law School family, which has been so instrumental in my professional development and career. As Michael pretty much said, I was kind of born into the Brooklyn Law School family. My mother, Margaret, started teaching at Brooklyn when I was 11, and she and my father, Mark, were both very involved in the law school community, which I, too, came to know. My kids did some growing up at the law school. Grandma Margaret was only too happy to bring them over for holiday and other events. In fact, I remember well how my mom would pick Tashi up at school and bring her over to help her clean up her office. A Sisyphean task, if there ever was one, as I'm sure Margaret's colleagues here today can attest. Brooklyn was the logical law school for me to attend. It was excellent, and the price was right. As a perk to professors, their children went for free, something I have never taken for granted and for which I am eternally grateful. When I started law school, I wasn't at all sure that I wanted to go on to practice law. I had been working in the corporate and crisis communications world and thought a legal background would help me excel in those areas. My thinking evolved fairly quickly. I was in Professor Gerber's first semester contracts class, where we were given a clinical assignment to meet with a client and to negotiate a written employment contract on his or her behalf with a classmate, who in turn represented another such client. These clients were, in true Michael Gerber fashion, former students of his. And this exercise, among other things, afforded us a great opportunity to meet and really work with successful alums in practice. I was hooked. This exercise, in fact, made such an impression on me that today I can still remember the name of one of the parties to the fictive contract, Lawrence Gottesman. True, one of Michael's first students. Now, the postscript is that the Brooklyn Law School family, being the close-knit one that it is, the real Larry Gottesman, one of Michael's first students, now heads up our firm's reorganization and bankruptcy practice. Unsurprisingly, my Brooklyn education prepared me exceptionally well for the demands of a sophisticated and challenging practice involving a broad complement of complex matters. Some 23 years ago, I was extraordinarily fortunate to co-found a firm together with two colleagues and friends, fabulous lawyers and people, even if they do hail from NYU and Columbia Law Schools. We have built, and I say this completely objectively, an outstanding law firm. And while we count among our lawyers alumni from a number of leading law schools, I take great satisfaction and pride in telling you that we now have more Brooklyn alums than lawyers from any other law school. I am committed to Brooklyn Law School not only because of what it has done for me, but because of the values and first-rate education it continues to provide, about which we have heard just a bit today. But for the most conclusive evidence of the law school family's ongoing success, just take a look around this room. Here today are many leading lights of the profession, some in private practice, others in public interest positions or in the judiciary or government or academia, nonprofits, business, or finance. Others are using their legal training in ways they may not remotely have imagined when they were in law school. But Brooklyn Law School nonetheless prepared them for the critical thinking and wherewithal that are at the heart of what they do today. I couldn't be prouder to be part of this incredible family, let alone for its recognition today. Thank you again for this tremendous honor.
All that remains is to thank you all so very much for coming. I know it's always a wonderful, inspirational event, this lunch. We had 3 wonderful honorees this year, and we look forward to seeing you next year. But before you leave, there are those pledge cards on the table. So please give often, and we'll see you next year. Thank you very much.